My wife passed away before she finished her first book, and when I tried to honor her memory by finding the draft, I found out she was writing to her affair partner and planning how to steal the kids away. So I, 46M, have been with my wife Cynthia, 44F, for 22 years, at least up until last month. Last month, Cynthia got caught up in a really bad car crash. She was always one of those drivers who loved to stare into her phone, and I should have done more to get her to change, but unfortunately, this distracting habit caught up to her in the last week of January. The police showed up at my doorstep and asked if this was her residence and if I was her husband. I said yes, and they gave me their condolences and informed me that Cynthia was caught up in a fatal car accident. I was crushed. We had 2 kids together, 18F and 16M, and we struggled to keep it together in the immediate days following her passing. I really wanted to honor her memory somehow, and at the time of the accident, I had no idea she was having an affair. I will say that in the last 4 or 5 months, I did notice she was pulling away and our intimacy decreased, but I thought this was just something that happened to couples after 20 years, so I didn't pay much mind to it. But anyway, at least from what she told me, Cynthia started to get into writing. She was constantly on her laptop, typing away at all hours. She told me she was working on a fantasy book, hopefully the first of a series. When I asked for more details, she said it was about a fantasy world where a super advanced human race appears and interacts with orcs and elves, incorporating magic alongside futuristic human tech. It sounded very cool, and Cynthia promised that as soon as she had a first draft she liked, she would let me read it. I decided to honor her by obtaining the draft of her book and hiring a writer to clean it up and publish it with a novelty press. I accessed her laptop, and there was no book. No sign at all. I opened her Chrome, thinking she might have written it in Google Drive, and saw a bunch of pinned tabs. One was a Facebook Messenger tab, containing a ton of her messages with a man named John. I have no idea who John is, never met him, but they talked about meeting up, exchanged photos, everything. The last message John sent her was 2 days before Cynthia's accident, the two saying they loved each other, and him saying he was going on a business trip to Germany. The messages between Cynthia and John showed they had met up at the house more than once, so I already had the locks changed. Not sure if John is back yet, and frankly, I don't care if he is. I was thoroughly devastated. She did have a Google Drive tab, but in her drive wasn't a book about elves versus Vulcans, but a shared document with John. The document was a plan she and John drafted on how to divorce me, turn the kids against me, and take our home and as much money as possible. One thing she noted was she had been taking money, a few hundred a month, and putting it in a separate account. I got the bank thing sorted out, and I've also been going to therapy twice a week now. It is hard to be mad at someone who's no longer living, especially someone everyone else in your life is grieving and praising as a wonderful wife and mother. I have asked my therapist if I should tell my kids about what Cynthia has done and what she was planning to do. My therapist cautioned me about this. He said that they just lost their mother, and being told this would be condemning her memory, damnatio memoriae. Maybe now is not the time, but I think eventually would be a good time for my kids to know. Update 1. Some things have happened since last week. To answer some questions, I have gone to the bank and gained control of Cynthia's account, transferring the money into a savings account for the kids. Also, my kids already suspected. Tuesday night, my eldest said she and my son had something to tell me. They sat me down in the living room, and my daughter broke the silence saying, "We think mom was cheating on you." They both said they weren't sure, but it was eating them up seeing me in extreme grief over the past month, and they thought I should hear what they suspected. They brought up how Cynthia was always away, and when she was at home, she would make strange observations about me. Stuff like, "Isn't it weird your dad's working late this week?" As you might have guessed, this was one of those seeds Cynthia mentioned in her document that she wanted to plant in the kids. My daughter said her suspicions went high the week before the accident when she got home from school and saw a strange jacket on the coat hook by the front door. It wasn't any jacket my son or I had, so she was very suspicious about it. I told both my kids that I didn't tell them, but I found evidence on their mom's computer when I was looking for the book she said she was writing. My daughter wanted to see the evidence, but my son said he doesn't want to think or talk about mom for a while. I shared the info with her after she insisted she already suspected her mom and was ready for it. It feels good to now have someone close who can talk to me about this beyond my therapist. Yesterday afternoon, I was home alone when I heard someone jiggling the back door's knob. I went to the door and saw a man I had never seen before trying to use a key on the lock. I told him to step back from the door, and he almost jumped. I opened the door ajar and asked him who he was and what he was doing in my backyard. He introduced himself as John, Cynthia's business partner. He told me that he worked with my wife, and he just got back from a trip and saw Cynthia had passed away on social media. He mentioned that he and Cynthia were starting a business, and they had a business bank account with his investment money stuck there, and he was wondering if I could help him get the business funds transferred over. I looked him straight in the eye and said I had been to the bank, and Cynthia didn't have an extra business account, and I had no idea what he was talking about. John also mentioned that he wanted to check my wife's things for any sensitive business documents. I told him he was a stranger and wasn't welcome in my home, especially since he tried to enter without permission. John looked defeated but said he would consult with a lawyer about his sensitive business documents and business funds. So time will tell what happens.